In the next videos, I want to show you a few more post-production techniques we can do using Blender, and the first one of them will be masking out the elements. So let's say in our final picture we want to increase or decrease the brightness of a certain material without affecting the rest of the image. And the best way we can do that is by creating a mask of the material we want to influence. Blender allows us doing that using the amazing Cryptomate node within the compositor. So right now in this video, I want to show you how to set up this kind of image, how the masks work, and how we can combine everything later in Blender. Let's begin with enabling the Cryptomate rendering elements. To do that, we have to go to the viewer layer settings here. Now to the render passes. Once we expand this tab, you can see many different options. So let's just hide the data and light as for now. And within the Cryptomate, I usually only enable the object and material options. If we go to the compositing and enable the nodes, you can see we have the Cryptomate outputs here, but they are not available yet because we have to re-render our image to have it all visible. So let's do it right now, and I'm gonna get back to you once it's re-rendered. So the image is now re-rendered, as we can see here. However, we have the same situation as when we were doing the tone mapping and post-production. So if we restart Blender right now, this entire result will be lost and we would have to re-render the image again to have access to those layers. So to avoid re-rendering, let's go to the render settings and save our image as OpenXR file format again. However, instead of choosing the previous OpenXR file format, we have to go with the multi-layer one. And this multi-layer thing, so to speak, adds those render layers we had in the compositor. So let's now open a clean Blender file, go to the compositing. I'm going to press Ctrl Spacebar full screen. I'm going to enable the nodes and delete the bases we have created. Now I'm going to press Shift A, input and image. Let's enlarge it a little bit. Click open and select our Cryptomate XR file. So once we do that, you can see our input. However, we don't see the layers we had set up. And to do that, to enable them, we have to switch the settings here. Now I'm going to add a viewer node, plug it in here so we just see our base rendering. I'm going to press V key to zoom out a little bit, Alt V to zoom in. And I'm going to copy this viewer node. And I'm going to press Shift A, go to Matte and choose Cryptomate. So this is the main node we are going to use for previewing the selection layers. What we have to do right now is simply connecting the dots. However, we don't have to plug in all of those inputs to this node. You could think we can just connect one with one, two with two, but what usually works is just plugging in those zeros together. Let's also connect the image. And the first thing you want to do is connecting the pick output with an image input. And that gives us a preview of the selection layer we can now use. If we simply connect the matte or image, we don't see anything as for now. But here within the node, we can see the picker tools. So let's just click it and select anything within this preview layer. So this greenish color is representing our wooden material. The orange is the plaster, and this is the concrete floor. So I'm just gonna select this picker and click on it. You can see we have this hash code being displayed here. Let's duplicate this viewer node once more, and now if I connect the matte with the input here, you can see we have our selection mask. If I connect the image, we will have this render element cut out from the main image and separated here. So if I go back to the pick preview here, I can click the remove picker, remove this concrete material, and let's say add a plaster and gloss. So you can see if we expand it here, we have two selections added, and now when I click on the viewer node, we have those selection elements visible. And again, if I just connect the matte, now I can see just the mask. As you can see here on the left, we have two groups of matte selection layers. So the first one is based on the materials. What it means that a single color within the image represents a single material. We have one plaster shader, which is represented by this sand kind of color. We have one wooden shader, which is represented by this greenish color. We have one concrete shader. We have two glass materials, which, as you can see, are separated slightly by this bluish tint. And yeah, the table and the chairs, they also share the same material. That's why they have the same color. But we can also differentiate the selection based on the actual object. So if I plug in this input here, yeah, let's zoom out. You can now see each chair has a different color tint. The table, kind of looks the same as this material, same as this counter and the bar stool, but if we use the picker tool, we can actually select individual objects here. You can see it the same here on the lamps and so on. So now in the next video, I want to show you how we can combine those different selection methods and enhance our base image. So what I'm going to do will be desaturating the walls and maybe influencing the color of the individual elements around the scene. So see you in the next video. Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to use the Cryptomate node to edit different elements within the rendering and then combine them together. So first let's try desaturating the ceiling and the walls here. For that I'm going to use the material input in my Cryptomate node. So you can see there's a same material on both of these elements. Let's use the color picker and let's now preview if we have the correct selection. So in order to desaturate those elements, I'm going to press Shift A, go to color, hue, saturation value. I would just go down with the saturation. So you can see there is no color tint within those elements if we have 0. And the question is how we can add these effects to our main image. You would normally think there should be a way so we can now put those two elements on top of this rendering, and that does the trick. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like this in Blender. So we have to kind of go around it and yeah, make it a little bit differently. To combine our Cryptomate selection with the main image, we have to create color mix node. So once I drag and drop it into the main link here, you will see this is the result we are getting. And that's because our image input is mixed with this color. So if I use this slider, you can see we are able to change the amount of mix happening. And the way to connect our Cryptomate with the main image is by taking the hue saturation node, changing the input from this image to the main image, and now plugging it here. What we have right now is our desaturated image. Right here we have image. Now it goes through this full desaturation node, and now it mixes with the main image represented with this link. What we have here right now is a mixture of, again, the main image with the desaturated image. So if I decrease this slider, the desaturation effect goes away. So what we want to have right now is this desaturation effect limited to this white area only, represented by the matte, represented by our selection from here. Long story short, just plug in the matte input to the FAC input here, and that does the trick for us. So you can see right now, if I change anything within this node, the change is only limited to the walls and to the ceiling. Now, what if we not only want to have our ceiling and walls desaturated, but the kitchen wooden element made darker? Well, we have to copy the Cryptomate node and simply create a new selection. So let's use a different viewer input here because we are not going to use this node anymore. Now let's plug in the image here again, and since we want to limit our change to this wooden element only, let's select this object, not the entire wooden material. So we are going to use the crypto object input here, and if I click on this viewer node, you can see this wooden element has slightly different tint than this one. So we are going to use a picker on that part. To remove the previous selection, I'm just going to click and hit delete. Now I'm going to click add, select our kitchen element and see if it previews correctly. That's right. So this is something we want to change right now. I'm going to add RGB curves. So Shift A, color, RGB curves, and just make this part a little bit darker. To add our edited element to the main result we have here so far, we have to use exactly the same trick. Let me remove this viewer node. Let's duplicate the mix shader. Sorry, it's actually not a shader, it's a node. So yeah, I'm gonna plug this input here. I'm gonna now take this image input, put it here. Let's disconnect this RGB curves node and let's drag and drop it to this link. And now again, what we have to do is use this matte input and use it as a FAC. So now if I preview the main viewer, you can see this element gets dark, and we can use this curve to edit it only. The final trick I would like to show you what we can do using those nodes. As you can see, by the way, the setup becomes pretty complex. So I personally, I'm not the biggest fan of using Blender Compositor for this kind of node editing. That's why in the next video I'm going to show you how to do this in Photoshop. But still, I want to show you how you can add color to some of the elements, and let's say we will make the table here blue. Let's start by duplicating this Cryptomate node again, removing anything from here and using the object input again. Let's take this viewer node and let's use the color picker to choose the table. Let's see the preview, and this is our selection. Now to add a color, we also use the color mix node. So I'm going to press Shift A, color mix, plug it in here, and you can see right now the whole table got white. If we change the color here, it's gonna simply have this very plain look, and that's because we are using the mix method here. But if you click on this button, zoom out a little bit, you can see there are many different blend types we can use in Blender. These are quite similar to the ones you also have in Photoshop or GIMP or any other application, to add kind of an color overlay over the object so we don't lose the shadows and the details. Depending on the situation, you might use the multiply like this, and then use this slider to increase or decrease the effect, overlay, or soft light. And which one does the best job? In my opinion, it really depends on the situation. For example, overlay tends to overburn some of the colors. Multiply tends to make things a little bit too dark in my opinion, but again, depending what you're looking for, you might try different blend types. So let's stick with the soft light for now and see how it looks if we combine this changed element with the main image. So I'm gonna repeat the process again. As you can see, this is now our final output connected to this viewer node. Let's just press V and Alt middle mouse button to move the back image a little bit. So yeah, we're gonna simply duplicate this node, connect it. Now take the main input, plug it in here, disconnect this node from everything, drag and drop it here and use the matte as an input to this fact node here. So now you can see the table in our image is blue. And if this blue color is good enough for you, well, you can always get back to this one single node here and play around with it to see what looks best. I would say the soft light is the best blend mode option here. So let's get back to it and use it as on the max mix value here. What's also very cool is that you can expand the selection at any moment. So if we use the pick output here for the viewer again, and let's say add a few more objects to the selection, they will be instantly visible here as well. So a pretty good thing if you want to prepare multiple versions of a rendering. Obviously you can see these colors are not visible in the reflections, but for a very quick previews, let's say if you have to create different color setups for your client or for yourself to find the best solution, I would say this is a very good way of doing that. So yeah, I would say that's basically it. Let's now go back to the very beginning of this setup in the next video, and I'm gonna show you how we can use those selection layers in Photoshop. Hi everyone, in this video I want to show you how we can save our Cryptomate selection to Photoshop, how to export it from Blender. The process is actually very simple. Let's say we want to save our wooden material and yeah, edit it later as a selection in Photoshop. So you can see we already have it extruded from the main image. Let's switch to the render settings here and let's switch from render result to the viewer node. So right now here we have a preview of what's actually visible here with our viewer node clicked. If I switch to this mask, we will have it visible here in the rendering window. So what you want to do basically is saving this view as a PNG file. So it's selected by default with the alpha channel. So we select RGBA. You can also switch to 16 bits if you want to have the full quality of the image with all of the color spectrum, but I usually go with 8 bits if I don't want to overthink my post-production. So let's save this file and let's also pick a few other elements from our scene, and I'm gonna get back to Photoshop and show you how to combine them. In Photoshop, I have my image open, and to import the elements, I can simply drag and drop them to my file. You just have to be sure they're matching exactly the corners of the original image. Some older versions of Photoshop tend to move the elements slightly, just a few pixels to the left or right. And yeah, we can simply add one element after another, align them together, and you will see we have them visible as layers. To edit the layers individually, we have to select one of them and go to the selection masks here. Let's say I want to add curves and have them influence this layer only. To do that, there is this little button like this. It will add this little arrow here. I don't know how it might look a little bit different in each version of Photoshop, but basically you should find it somewhere around here. And now if I change the curve, it will only edit this one element. So let's do this with concrete floor. Let's say I want to add levels and limit their range only to this floor. And you can see the effect immediately in Photoshop. In order to colorize elements in Photoshop, we have to save the mask as an extra file. So let's say we want to colorize this lamp. I'm going to click on it and plug the matte output into the viewer node. So right now, if we go to the render, this is the mask we can save. Let's do this. And in Photoshop, You want to drag and drop the mask to the file. Now let's rasterize it. Press Ctrl A to select everything, Ctrl C to copy, and Ctrl D to deselect. Let's disable the mask. Let's now create a new layer and fill it with color. Let's say red. I'm going to press Alt B to fill the layer, and let's press this button here to add the mask. Now I'm going to hold my Alt key, left click, and now press Ctrl V to paste our mask as an actual mask to this color layer. So you can see right now the red color is only visible if I press Alt and left click. I can enter the mask editing view. So right now the color is limited only to our lamp. Here we can also switch the blend modes exactly the same way as in Blender. And depending on the effect you want to achieve, you might need a different option to be selected. So I would say here the overlay seems to be doing the best job. We can change the opacity by holding the Shift key and scrolling. We can do the 10% increments. So yeah, that's basically it. Again, to colorize the elements, we have to save a mask from Blender. And to edit them normally, we can just add the clipping mask with this arrow here, which is enabled under this icon. Thank you guys for watching. This video is part of my interior visualization course in Blender, which you can watch for free on YouTube. All the necessary details and link to the full playlist can be found in the video description. If you want to support what I do and access all of the 3D files used in this course, plus Blender-ready interior setups and over 2,000 Blender-exclusive 3D models, just visit the Chocofor store and learn more about our subscription plans. Again, thanks for watching, and I see you soon.